couple weeks ago, I put out on one of the social platforms, Ask a Scientist Anything, right? And there were a lot of interesting questions that came in. But one of them was, hey, you should go watch old sci-fi movies and talk about the science. And I was like, that's actually kind of an interesting idea because I tend to leave a lot of background noise on when I'm working anyway. And I've seen a lot of sci-fi movies. So just as a refresher, I thought I'd throw one on and maybe go through some of the Star Trek films because I've seen all of them. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great. But I thought I'd just kind of go through them, one at a time as I get a chance and say, hey, look, what's good and what's bad about each one. But I wanted to go back to the beginning and say, let's start at the first one and look for, let's talk about the science of, Star Trek, the motion picture. The trouble with Star Trek, the motion picture is it is an epic disaster on so many levels. I mean, the directing, special effects, costume, script writing, it just sort of fails everywhere. How they ever wound up with a second movie, I don't really understand, but they did because I think that it was such a beloved franchise that the movie couldn't possibly kill it no matter what happened. And what do I mean by, even acting? Everybody was really stiff. There was the only person that ever really expressed emotion anywhere on the movie was Mr. Scott because well, he's Mr. Scott. You half suspect he's drunk half the time, but we love him anyway because he's Scotty. But it's just I haven't seen it in years. It came out in 1979. I remember seeing it as a little kid. Um, I can't remember. I don't think it was in the theater. I think it was finally on HBO or something when I first saw it, and I was like, "Oh wow, Star Trek!" And now I watch it again. I'm like, "Wow, this is just bad. It's just so bad." Everybody's very stiff. They're very wooden. They just kind of stand there. They barely move. They talk to each other as this drone is coming to kill the Earth. And it's a 40-year-old movie, and I'm not giving anything away here. But the cool part, one of the few cool parts, is you do get to see all the heroes, the original cast, kind of come back to play again. And of course, you get some new background actors, but of course, nobody really pays attention to them because they're the background guys, like the red shirts on the old franchise, right? The red shirts being down, they don't come back, right? You know it's going to be a bloodbath when there's a lot of red shirts down there. You do get to see the redesigned Enterprise and space dock. It's completely refit, so that's kind of neat. But let's go on the wormhole for a minute. People want to talk about the science. There ain't a lot of science in this film. There's only really two or three bits that happen that really have any kind of scientific background at all. And sorry for the blurry picture. It's a 1979 movie. It's the best I could find. So the Enterprise hasn't been taken out of space dock yet since it's retrofit, and they haven't tested everything out. They don't know if it's going to work, if it's not. But a disaster's coming, so you got to run out and fix it. And first time they try to go to warp, they accidentally create a wormhole. Well, what is a wormhole? Well, first off, they're only theoretical. Came out of general relativity. It's like a shortcut in space. It's like, oh, you want to go from here to there? Well, let's build a superhighway. It's like taking superhighways instead of country roads. It's the same difference, um, but on a cosmic level. And again, they're only theoretical. They did sort of accidentally create one in the movie when they're trying to use their warp drive. And warp drive is another thing. The way warp drive is supposed to work is it bends space so that you're not really flying faster than light. You're flying less distance than you think you are because you've bent space around it. And again, that comes out of relativity that it is possible theoretically to bend space and time. Most of it comes out of gravitational theory because we understand that gravity works, but we don't understand what gravity really is. So there's a whole physics phenomena behind that that's still not understood to this day, and the movie uses liberally, which is fine. Warp drive is kind of neat and it solves the problem of interstellar travel. Now, is it real? I did, and this was kind of humorous if you want to get into another bit of sort of science background. They do have a transporter accident in the movie that sort of was, somebody didn't quite survive the transporter going from the planet to the ship. And so I got in this discussion a few months ago with a working professional person who swears to me that transporters are real. And as a scientist, I should know that because apparently all scientists know everything that's going on everywhere. And apparently we're using transporters here on Earth to keep our Martian colonies alive. So there's an interesting set of conspiracy theories running around about Star Trek transporters. When in reality they were created by Gene Roddenberry because he figured out that on the television show it would take too long to put everybody in a shuttlecraft to go back and forth to the planet's surface all the time, and transporters were a quick shortcut. Um, there are people that claim in labs they're doing quantum teleportation or atomic level teleportation. I've seen papers. that's a whole near another set of videos. And I'm not sure I buy off on it, but anyway. Yes, there's evidence, but again, that's a different set of videos, and we'd have to go out talk for a very long time. Uh, Now the whole premise of the movie is that this thing called Voyager is coming back to Earth to discuss some things with the creator, and it took out a couple Klingon vessels because, of course, the Klingons fired first, and then it took out a space station because the space station didn't know what was going on. So, of course, leave it to Kirk and the guys in their fancy uniforms that I think fail on a costuming standpoint epically. But leave it to Kirk and the guys and women of his team to go off and solve the problem. Of course, Voyager turns out to be Voyager 6. Voyager 6 was a space probe we sent up to go learn about the galaxy. Apparently, it went out there so long and collected so much information that it became self-aware, and it came back to Earth to try to find the creator and merge with it. The trouble with all that is Voyager 6 could never do all that on its own. It doesn't have enough. It doesn't. None of the Voyager craft had enough memory to do much of anything. They really are just sort of grab it and send it back to us, kind of probes. Or were right? A couple of them are still Voyager, still kind of working on occasion. But anyway, it without help from some alien race, there's no way it could do any of this stuff, right? So, and they sort of gloss over all that in the script writing. It's like, how did Voyager kind of expand like this in 300 years? It came back with a whole lot of extra gear. Yet it doesn't have the capability to do that. So somebody helped it, right? Who helped it? We have no idea. But it came back. So the movie really doesn't have a lot of science in it. Really doesn't have a lot of high-end philosophical questions other than, what is man, what is machine, and are those two things, can those two things ever be the same? I think it's trying to throw an AI question at us. But the movie just fails on so many levels that when I watched it again, I was like, wow, this does deserve all the bad mentions that it gets. It just fails everywhere. Um, but the second movie that comes up is, of course, Wrath of Khan. And Wrath of Khan is one I want to watch with the kids later, because it's probably one of the best sci-fi movies I've ever seen. Anyway, this movie, there's not a lot of science to it. There's the wormhole thing, the transporter thing, warp drive. But outside of that, there's really not much else to this film, other than spectacularly bad costuming, writing, acting, directing, special effects, and pretty much everything. So everybody have a great day. Click like, subscribe, follow. If you have a sci-fi movie you want me to kind of go through and talk about the science of that actually has some science to it, I'd love to do it. Just drop a comment below. Everybody have a good one.